Recording in progress.
Chair,
Go ahead, Ms.
I'm sorry, but we have a citizen here. They're having their HOA meeting tonight at City Hall, and they need more chairs. And we don't have anybody else here to assist her. We don't have anyone from building maintenance, so is it possible that we could maybe start the meeting a little bit late tonight and then help her clear some of these chairs out?
Absolutely.
Start our meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. We're just here to volunteer, whatever it takes. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for February 16th, 2023. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. The commissioners who are present for this evening's meeting are at City Hall and on Zoom. We also have staff from the city attorney and clerk's offices, as well as the city planning department. If you're joining us on Zoom this evening, we can see that you are here. You may observe the meeting, however, your ability to be seen on screen and talk will be muted. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, you will be unmuted and then be able to comment. Please note that we cannot take questions until the public testimony portion. If you have a process question during the meeting, please email cityclerk@meridiancity.org and they will reply as quickly as possible. This evening we have some new faces that are joining us. We will welcome our new commissioners, Enrique Rivera and Jared Smith. If either one of you would like to say anything.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure being here, having done a couple stints on Transportation Commission. It's a pleasure being able to see the other side. I'm a firm believer that land use policy is transportation policy and vice versa, so it's going to be a pleasure to learn from y'all and help help the city manage its growth.
Good. Welcome.
Same here, Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you and serve on this commission and our community. Thank you.
Welcome to both of you, and I can't go too far without saying welcome back, Commissioner Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to be back.
All right, and with that, we'll have roll call. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Grace,
Here.
Commissioner Rivera,
Here.
Commissioner Lorcher. Here. Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Seal.
Here.
Absent are Commissioners Stoddard and Wheeler.
Okay, first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. This evening, we have the file for the variance request from a department determination concerning a proposal address change from 2201 East Gala Street for the Orm Family and Implant Dentistry. That is a mouthful. And file number H2022-0088 for Newkirk Neighborhood. Those files will be open for the sole purpose of continuing to a regularly scheduled meeting. They will be open for that purpose only. So if there's anybody here tonight to testify for those applications, we will not be taking testimony on them. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Right.
None opposed. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and we have two items on the consent agenda. First item is to approve the minutes of the February 2nd, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And we have findings of facts, conclusions of law for the conditional use permit for ESI office building, file number H2023-0002. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 None opposed. Motion carries. This time, I'd like to briefly explain the public hearing process. We will open each item individually and begin with the staff report. Staff will report their findings on how the item adheres to comprehensive plan and unified development code. After staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case and respond to staff comments. They will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant has finished, we will open the floor to public testimony. Each person will be called on only once during the public testimony. The clerk will call the names individually of those who have signed up on our website in advance to testify. You will then be unmuted on Zoom, or you can come to the microphones in chambers. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the commission. If you have previously sent pictures or presentations for the meetings, they will be displayed on the screen, and you'll be able to run the presentation from the stand. Lost my place. If you have established that you are speaking on behalf of a larger group like an HOA, where others from that group will allow you to speak on their behalf, you will have up to 10 minutes. After all those who have signed up in advance have spoken, we will invite any others who may wish to testify. If you wish to speak on the topic, you may come forward in chambers or in the Zoom, press raise hand button or in the Zoom app, or if you are only listening on a phone, please press *9 and wait for your name to be called. If you're listening on multiple devices, such as a computer and a phone, please be sure to mute the extra devices so we do not experience feedback. We can hear you clearly. When you're finished, if the commission does not have questions for you, you will return to your seat in chambers or be muted on Zoom and no longer have the ability to speak. And please remember, you will not be called on a second time. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant is finished responding to the questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make final decisions or recommendations to City Council as needed. All right, so at this time, I would like to continue the public hearing for variance request from a department determination concerning a proposed address change for 2201 East Gala by Orm Family and Implant Dentistry. And that, to continue that to the date of March 2nd, 2023. Can I get a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, does that have a file number?
It does not have a file number that I'm aware of, but it has a really, really long title.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I would move to continue item number 4, variance requests from a department determination concerning a proposed address change for 2201 East Gala Street by Orm Family and Implant Dentistry to our next, or to the regularly scheduled meeting on March 2nd.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to continue the variance request from a department determination concerning proposed addressing change for 2201 East Gala Street by Orm Family and Implant Dentistry to March 2nd, 2023. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. This time I'd like to continue public hearing for Newkirk Neighborhood, file number H 2022-0088, for continuance to March 2nd, 2023. I'll take a motion on that.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
I motion that we continue file number H 2022-0088, Newkirk Neighborhood, to the hearing date of March 2nd, 2023.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to continue file number H 2022-0088, Newkirk Neighborhood, to the date of March 2nd, 2023. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. It is continued. All right. I'd like to open file number H 2022-0084, Alexander's Landing subdivision, and we will begin with the staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The applicant is here to present their presentation for Alexander's Landing subdivision. The applications are annexation and zoning and preliminary plat. The site consists of 5.2 acres of land, zone RUT, located near the southeast corner of West Pine Avenue and Black Cat. The comprehensive plan flume designation is medium density residential. The subject 5.23 acres currently contains an existing home. The subject site is abutting an R8 development to the north, Horse Meadows subdivision to the east, and west is county residential not yet annexed into the city of Meridian. And to the south is the railroad and the Purdom Gulch drain. The subject property is designated as medium-density residential on the future land use map, consistent with the approved development to the north. The applicant proposes a 24-lot subdivision and 4 common lots for single-family residential detached home at a gross density of 4.59 units per acre, which is within the desired density range of the medium-density residential designation. An existing home on the property is proposed to remain on Lot 1, Block 2. The outbuilding located on Lot 3, Block 2 shall be removed with development of this property. The existing home does not meet the required number of off-street parking spaces per the UDC for a 3-bedroom home. 4 parking spaces are required, or at least 2 in an enclosed garage, or other spaces may be enclosed, or a minimum of 10-foot by 20-foot parking pad. The existing home does not comprise of an enclosed garage. Staff recommends that the nonconformity of the home be remedied to meet the off-street parking regulations prior to the city engineer's signature on the final plat. Access is proposed from Quarter Horse Lane from the north. Direct access to North Black Cat Road and Pine Avenue is prohibited. The subject property is dependent upon the development of the Horse Meadows subdivision directly to the north. To reconstruct a portion, this property is required to reconstruct a portion of Quarter Horse Lane, which is an existing private road, as a public street, which would provide public street frontage and access to this site. So due to access availability, development should not commence until a public road access is available to the site upon development of the Horse Meadows subdivision prior to submitting a final plat for approval. A local stub street is proposed for interconnectivity between the 2 developments that is stubbed at the east-west boundary on the site in accordance with the UDC. The street does exceed 150 feet, so therefore a temporary turnaround is required. The applicant is proposing to construct the temporary turnaround on a common lot. which decreases the usability of the area. Staff recommends that the applicant construct the temporary turnaround on lots 5, 7, Block 3 in the southwest corner of the development to increase the open space for the development. The reason for this recommendation is to ensure open space for the development remains intact without placing a burden on the HOA to remediate the removal of the turnaround area. The applicant included a concept plan for the property on the west to show how that would develop in the future, and it's currently zoned R1 in the county. And that road also goes to the west to go through that property. This is potential. No street buffers are required per the UDC for internal local streets. Common open space landscaping is proposed as shown on the landscape plan. A minimum of 15% or 1.23 acres based on the 5.23 acres of qualified open space is required to be provided in this development per the standards in the UDC. An open space exhibit was submitted that depicts 2.15 acres of common open space for development and 0.78 acres of this area's qualified open space. The amount of qualified open space required is 0.78 acres, approximately 33,977 square feet. There is a 10-foot wide pathway is required per the master pathways plan in lieu of the proposed 6-foot pathway running along the southern border. The project size of 5.23 acres requires a minimum of 1 amenity point for every 5 acres, and according to the plan submitted, there are 3 amenity points: a picnic shelter with tables, and a pathway, according to the UDC. The proposed amenities and their point value is correct and exceed UDC requirements for this project of this size. Sidewalks are all 5 feet attached and proposed within the development in accordance with the UDC standards. And the Purdom Gulch drain runs along the southern border of the site. And staff did not receive a response from Meridian Nampa Irrigation District on whether or not an easement exists on the property for the lateral. If it does, it should be depicted on the plat and no encroachments allowed within the easement. And then per the UDC, the applicant is requesting a council waiver to allow the Purdom Gulch drain to remain open in a natural state. Elevations, 3 conceptual elevations were submitted and floor plans that demonstrate what future homes in this development will look like. Variations of 2-story homes with 2-car garages are proposed. These submitted elevations depict a number of architectural and design styles with field materials of lap siding, different coloring access, roof pro lines, and varying of home styles. Staff recommends the applicant add additional stone or brick accents to the front of the homes to provide more of a variation in materials. There wasn't any written testimony on this project, and staff recommends approval for this annexation with the requirement of a development agreement and a preliminary plat with the conditions listed in the staff report. And that concludes the presentation, and I stand for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Would the applicant like to come forward? Good evening. For the record, Camp Brown, 3161. For the record, Camp Brown. Uh-oh. We thought our technical troubles were over, but we're going to get to it.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you now. There we go.
I think we've heard that before. For the record, Kent Brown, 3161 East Springwood, Meridian, Idaho. And I'm representing Quarter Horse Lane LLC on this project. Is this where I click presentation?
Was the wrong one.
I submitted some slides for my presentation, Joy. I only got 2 slides that we talked about. This is the part of my job that's the most difficult, is the IT technical
Absolutely.
part. So
Technology is wonderful when it works.
it is. What I wanted to show you is a vicinity map. One of the challenges of doing this kind of development as infill is keeping the existing that's there and then at the same time being a part of, if you will, a master plan for the area. It's like the master plan pathway that we have along our southerly boundary, so yes. Can you make that vicinity map bigger for me? There we go. Thank you. As you can see, our site, we're right adjacent to the railroad tracks and one home off of Black Cat Road. The comprehensive plan calls for a regional pathway to go along there. What's interesting, I did the developments that are along 10 Mile, the Mile High Pines and Foxcroft, and we were able to put that pathway in. I did quite a bit of the developments that are to the or to the west, which is the Chesterfield subdivision that's there. There's approximately 2,500 feet of that that's in there that doesn't have any accommodations for a future path. So you have a pathway that is coming from the east and off a 10 Mile, and then you have the ability when the property between us and 10 Mile goes in that the pathway can be extended out to Black Cat, and then when the property to the east of us goes in, then the pathway can continue. But then it needs to get up to a street somehow and then get back up onto Pine because there's no way for it to go through that 2,500 feet. And so that's some of the challenges that you end up with. We can see the advantage in doing that regional pathway in our development long-term, but it is something that the HOA is going to have out there for quite some time, and depending on what takes place with our neighbors. If you look to the north of us, just above where I put Pine Street, there's an entrance into the Castlebrook subdivision up there, and then a vertical common area. Can you put a cursor right there? So to the right of where it says Pine Street, there's an entrance to that subdivision to the north. And then right straight through that common area. And then right there at that location is a bridge that enters into the park, the city park. So that link, however that takes will will actually make that pathway kind of work. Over here on the 10-mile side, I show what's in green, which we're building in those two developments. And then we're putting in a bridge that takes us into the park and also provides safe access into the school. So then it makes sense, but by itself, it's kind of difficult at this point. Let's go to the next slide, which is the one of the plat. We chose to put the turnaround on the common area. We're doing a development agreement. In the development agreement, we can put conditions that would ensure that the developer is put money aside to remove that common, that space. We really feel that it's a good location for that turnaround at that point versus having to basically put non-builds on the lots that staff is recommending to the south. We have no idea when the property to the west of us is going to develop, and he can remain doing what he's doing currently and not be affected by either the horse meadows that's to the north of us. We've been working with them to get access and help them meet some of their ACHD requirements. And in turn, water and sewer comes through their development and helps get to us. So we would like that as our, I guess, change to what staff's asked. Everything else, I think we're agreeable to. We've tried to do a development that fits in with what's existing and still meet what's going on around us. We have plenty of common area without, we'll increase it when our turnaround goes away, but currently we meet the open space requirement by having that with a temporary turnaround on it for right now. I stand for any questions that you might have.
Okay, Kent, commissioners, do we have any questions for Commissioner Grace? I see you reaching for the microphone. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brown, with regard to the existing structure that's there, there's a comment in the report that they're going to have to update their off-street parking. Is that something there? So is the existing homeowners going to continue to live there? Is that something they're going to have to pay for?
They'll be a part of it, but basically what we're talking about is that you need parking pads. Right now in front of their house, they have a circle driveway, and people park on that circle driveway because it's been at the end or near the end of basically a private lane that was gravel to begin with. So we're assured that we can provide some parking pads and meet those requirements that the city has.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
for Newland Drive, where you have the turnaround as it exists right now,
Yes.
if the parcel to the west becomes developed, is that intention that would go out as an access road to Black Cat then?
No. The highway district and city staff don't want any further connections to Black Cat. So what would end up happening, and we provided staff with, a possible scenario. So what it would tie in is that basically you'd have that what's Horse Meadows with the cul-de-sac, that street would stub down and it would connect there, and that would provide a means of re-subdividing that property someday in the future. So we kind of anticipate that. It is also on the east end of that property. We've aligned our stub that goes to the east with what's in Chesterfield that's a property away also. So we've tried to put those in locations, and staff has been a part of that review to make sure that we're not putting a road. It's like saying you put the bridge to nowhere. Well, we're trying to put a road and a stub in a location that is beneficial for the future property as well as us.
Mr. Chair, one more question.
Yep, go ahead.
Is your group involved in the Horse Meadow subdivision?
We're not a part of it, but our developer has been in very close contact with them about that. They're supposed to start constructing soon, so we didn't want to really move forward until we knew that that was taking place, because I mean, that's going to be our access. We could not access off of Black Cat. We need to access off of Pine that's to the north.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
More of a newbie question, if you will, for maybe staff or other commissioners. Reading through the fire department comments, it looks like this is the same case for the other application they commented in the packet. They state that they are able to service the area, but not within the 5-minute goal. I don't know that I've seen any applications where they're confident they've been able to hit the 5-minute goal. Do they ever comment on what the estimated time would be? Obviously, there's a difference in my mind between 6 minutes and 15 minutes, theoretically. Do we know that at all? And I guess any clarification around that would be helpful.
We've had a couple of different meetings with the fire department, and that's pretty common for them to not be able to make a 5-minute goal unless it's right, in real close proximity. That said, I was kind of hoping to see more of a time estimate instead of, we don't make the 5 minutes, but we expect to make it in 8, like you said, and I'm not seeing that at this point yet. So hopefully that's to come. But generally speaking, if there's a large issue with it, that they will definitely point that out. If they're opposed to it for whatever reason, or they think it's going to create an unsafe condition, or if it's really outside of a time limit, they'll require places to be have sprinklers in them and things like that. So good question though.
Thank you.
Commissioner Grace?
I have a comment about that. If
Okay.
we look back at the vicinity map, so the two developments that I'm working on off of 10 Mile, Foxcroft is the one that's right next to the canal. Currently, everybody that's on Pine that lives there has to go to the west back to Black Cat, even though they might be wanting to go to the east. We're in the process. We just had the pre-con to put that bridge in and have that bridge installed. The road will continue to the west in what's to take place over there. Actually, it's right along the railroad tracks. That road extends, and that area is industrial. But this road will help improve the timeline that they're talking about, because right now they have to drive around. And by having this road cut through and that being created, it's viewed by the highway district that most of that traffic is going to go to the east to 10 Mile, then to the interchange and so forth. So that's taking place and being done. Most of that Pine Street has been constructed except for the bridge. So as soon as we can get that bridge in before water enters the ditch, then that will change the traffic patterns there. So,
Which is going to be good news all around, I think. Commissioner Grace?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is probably for staff. Can I just get some clarity on the open space requirement? I was a little confused maybe on the staff report as to, it looked like 15% or 1.23 acres was needed for qualified open space, and then below it talks about 0.78 acres. I was just looking for some clarity on that. Either way, it looks like they've met it, but.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Grace, we're going to pull up the staff report and double check. But they did provide 2.15 acres of open space, but we're double checking the staff report right now.
Okay. We'll go back to that answer. Any other questions from staff or for staff or the applicant?
Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
Another process question, if you will. So with the potential, if we were to approve this with the requirement of a development agreement, I know there's discussion about in that development agreement being the need for setting aside funds for remedying the eventual remedying of that turnaround. Would that be something that we include in this approval condition, or is that just for future? Like, will that be discussed in the future with the development agreement?
For planning and zoning, since we're a recommending body, we can ask to have that be a provision of our recommendation, but it's something that we would have to have stated in our motion.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Would be. Any others? All right.
The one comment I will make is,
Sir.
as I worked with the engineers, that was our goal, was to make sure that even though we were doing the turnaround, we didn't view that we could count that as open space. And so I'm pretty confident that the open space outside of that's required, and we'll have more open space as soon as the turnaround goes away, so.
Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify on this? We might
do,
make this
Mr.
quick for you.
Chairman. We have Lindsay Nietzsche, or Nikki? Okay.
Okay,
The lady in the back.
all righty. Thank you. Ma'am, do you want to go ahead and come on up? Sorry, there's somebody sitting right behind you that. Oh, okay. Is there anybody else that would like to come up and testify on this? I don't think we have anybody online that's going to be doing anything. Nobody's raising their hand
I
there?
do not have anybody signed up online, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Brown, do you have anything else to add? All right, thank you very much. With that, I will take unless there's any other discussion, I will take a motion to close the public hearing for item number H 2022-0084, Alexander's Landing subdivision.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0084. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, public hearing is closed. I will take any discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
I live near Black Cat and Cherry, so I'm familiar with this site. I'm also familiar with the site, the homestead in front of this development, and it's the Roosevelt Elementary School that was used in 1910. So it's a part of our Meridian history, and it's a little presumptuous to say that there will be development. It would be a catastrophe for the city of Meridian to lose that as a historical building with a road possibly going through it in the future. So I'm not part of the historical committee, but I would fight pretty hard to make sure that that school/home now stays part of our history. The fact that there's so much going on here right now with everything happening at 10 Mile with Pine coming through, but it hasn't happened yet. Horse Meadow being developed, but it hasn't happened yet. ACHD is not planning to widen Black Cat yet. I believe they have the right product for the site, but in the best interest of the city, I think a few things need to happen before the site can be developed.
Anybody else have comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would only make the comment that I was really curious about the open space. It's not critical to me. It's only the annexation stage, and I'm sure that's subject to some change in the future. So I don't want staff to get too wrapped around the axle about it. But yeah, I was just a little confused on that piece.
Okay. Stacy, do we have anything to contribute on that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Grace. So yes, we're double checking the numbers, and they're only required to have 34,000 square foot open space. So they exceed it. It maybe wasn't explained it was a little bit thrown off. The 2.15 is actually all of the open space they proposed, not the qualified. So it was broken down.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair?
Go right ahead.
Just to put some thoughts out there around the timing. I agree there's a lot going on in that area, and Black Cat seems to be one of those areas that will be hopefully worked on at some point, maybe. That being said, I think the Horse Meadows, the requirement that Horse Meadows be developed prior to this, I do think alleviates some of my concerns around that, around that access and the kind of the things up in the air. I appreciate the information around that historical site, and that does certainly factor in. I wonder, though, if there are certain possibilities for these to be worked out, not necessarily all the additional external factors, but to be considered during the development process, because otherwise, like my fellow commissioner said, it does seem like it's the right product for the area. It does seem like it's a good fit for the area. So those are just some thoughts. I think it's a tough balancing act at the moment, but I think I am generally more amenable to letting them work on those historical site considerations and those kind of externalities on that end as development progresses, given the Horse Meadows requirement and the development agreement that I would support requiring as well.
A couple thoughts on this. Infill's tough, so I'm generally a little critical of some of these. I call them the have your cake and eat them too developments, where the property owner wants to maintain their house. So sometimes that makes for good transition. Sometimes it doesn't. So this seems to be, it's not outlandish in this case for sure. One of the concerns that I have that was addressed is basically the funding to take care of the turnaround that's there. One of the concerns I have about it just being that turnaround is it's somewhat unusable. We've had other circumstances like this where other commissioners have talked about putting up a basketball hoop or something like that just to make it a usable space. Basically, it's not qualified open space, so something along those lines. But the private road dimensions of this are a little concerning because there's not a lot of homes here to support the private road as far as the funding for that in the future. So that, to me, is probably the bigger concern I have of this. My comments about the ACHD report is maybe they haven't been there when I've been there, but that seems to happen a lot with the ACHD reports saying that Black Cat is okay. When Pine Street opens up, I think that's going to eliminate a lot of the problems that we're seeing on the Black Cat area there. It's going to create a whole new set of problems for 10 Mile in that intersection there, but it's being built to handle it. But again, I think the private road and just the funding of that is probably more, that's a concern for me, just for the people that live there in the future and their ability to fund maintenance and care on those roads. So that is all private, correct, Bill? No? Oh, I thought it was all private, just the extension? Sorry. Maybe speaking out of
Chairman, members of the commission, currently the property only has private street access, but as part of this project, they're dedicating right away to ACHD, contingent upon Horse Meadows happening and
Gotcha.
public street being provided to this property.
Okay.
And then the applicant will have to relinquish their rights to use their current access to Black Cat,
Okay.
which is Quarter Horse Lane, which is that easement that we discussed when Horse Meadows came through.
Right.
So whatever they do out here, and Kent knows very well that they can't just remove somebody's easement. They have to maintain access in perpetuity or provide other means of access, and that's what they're doing here. So just for the record, to clear it up, this is intended to be public streets, not private.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot more sense, so. Never mind everything I said about the public streets, or the private streets then. So I
Mr.
interpreted that
Chair.
incorrectly. Yes, Commissioner Lorcher, go right ahead.
But currently, Quarter Horse is a private street. So
Right.
as everything gets developed, it will become a public street and ACHD will manage it, correct? Yes.
Okay. Any more discussion? Motions?
Mr. Chair, I was talking about the open space, and I probably didn't comment generally about it. I don't necessarily know that I have too many issues with the proposal, but I do agree. I guess I didn't pick up on the historical school aspect of it, and I would agree that whatever is in our purview to try to preserve that, and I don't know what is in our purview, but I would agree that we should try to do that. We don't probably have a tremendous amount of those kind of historical sites in Meridian, and to the extent we do have them, I think we should try to preserve them. So that would be the only caveat to my support.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, I have similar feelings to that piece of property myself, but I'm also looking at the application that's in hand and the rules we have to follow and the code that's there in order to provide for this application. So I'm trying not to get too wrapped up in that, but good comments. More discussion or motion? I'm open to,
Mr. Chair?
right ahead.
I do have a potential motion. I am looking over to council to hopefully help me ensure that this is proper. But I would like to make a motion to recommend approval to City Council for file number H2020, sorry, that's not the right, that is right. H2022-0088 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of February 16th, 2023 with the following modifications. And that would be the modifications laid out by staff in section, I believe sections 9 and 10, with the exception of the requirement to move the turnaround. Instead, asking for requiring a development agreement and requesting that that be part of that development agreement, that funds be set aside for future remediation of that turnaround, as well as a recommendation or request in an advisory capacity to work with the city on preserving that historic site in the future. I hope that's kosher.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, just for the record,
Yes.
great first motion, well done, thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
And just for clarity, we both heard on this end that we may have had misstated the file number, so I just wanted to clarify for the record the file number before that you're voting on right now, which is H-2022-0084. This will get that for the record, and Mr. Chairman, feel free to proceed with your vote.
And Mr. Chair, who made the second, please?
Commissioner Grace. So it has been moved and seconded to approve file number H2022-0084 for Alexander Landing subdivision with the aforementioned modifications. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Mr. Chair, just before, I'm sorry, I should have caught you a little sooner. Is the motion also currently, and Stacy can correct me if I'm wrong, but currently we have a condition of approval that states that they relocate that turnaround on those buildable lots. So we probably, if it's your intention to allow the turnaround to stay on the common lot through the surety process, then we probably should strike that condition as well.
Okay.
Was that your intention for the motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, yes, that was my intention. Apologies.
Thank you.
Okay, that's
I just want to make sure we
that's how
strike
I-
that
yeah,
condition.
I was going to say, that's
Thank
how
you.
I understood it, so I just wanted to make sure. No opposed, so motion carries. Thank you for the, oh, sorry, one opposed, but motion carries. We'll get there tonight, I promise. All right, thank you very much. And with that, we will open the public hearing for file number H 2022-0073 for Meridian OZ Apartments. And we will begin with the staff report. As long as you can make all the technology work for the rest of the evening, Bill.
I think I can do that. All right, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I think we're up and running now. So here I am tonight presenting to you the Meridian Oz project. This was continued from the last hearing in order for the applicant to massage the plan, modify the plan so that it could address some of staff's comments and then also ACHD's comments in their staff report. So you can see here on the first slide tonight that the future land use map on this property is mixed-use community. Current zoning is R40, and then the property is located on the the southwest corner of Franklin and Locust Grove. In 1999, this property was actually annexed in as part of the Cobblefield Village project, or Cobblestone Village project, excuse me, and it received conditional use permit approval to develop 96 multifamily units on the site. You can see here in this particular graphic, at the time that this came in, here's a graphic here for you, showed what was approved officially in 99 when it was annexed. When that intersection was improved and that road was widened, ACHD went in and took a portion of that property and developed their storm retention facility on it, and then also put up chain link fencing around it. So again, it's part of a natural riparian area for the 5 Mile Creek, so it's a little bit more enhanced in that area. But what it did was actually leave this particular property in the current configuration that you see in the graphic to your right. So the applicant is here to talk with you about, has submitted an application for a conditional use permit and also a development agreement modification. And again, you can see the reason for the DA modification is because the property has just changed, and so they need to modify the concept plan and the density that was approved with that plan. So staff also dug deep into our history of what was the comprehensive plan designation on this property back in '99. Is actually a mixed use plan development, which basically allowed for apartments. And the project at the time that it was approved was 15 dwelling units to the acre. In this current configuration, and what the application is proposing this evening is 60 multifamily units at a density of 25 dwelling units to the acre. Now, as this body knows, a mixed-use community designation, we anticipate densities between 6 to 15 dwelling units to the acre. So again, it is on the higher density type side, but again, the property is zoned R40. And if you look at the purpose statement in the zoning ordinance, it does anticipate higher densities occurring on that. So again, council will take action on the development agreement modification and determine whether or not density is appropriate for this site, if 25 is the right number, or if something should change. But as far as what we're showing with you tonight, we feel like whether it's 4 buildings at 40 units to the 8 units to the acre, or 8 units per structure, or 12 units per structure, it's pretty much going to be a similar design as you're seeing. So it's really whether or not 3 stories is appropriate, 2 stories is appropriate, as we move forward through the development process. As I mentioned to you, this application was continued because ACHD actually required the applicant to relocate their access. When they originally submitted their application to the city, the primary access was from Franklin, and ACHD actually required the applicant to reconfigure their site plan and require that their access to this development come off of Locust Grove because it's the lesser classified arterial roadway. So that's why we reached out to the applicant and said, hey, are you aware of this? They indicated they were, and they realized they had to redesign, so they did accommodate our request to continue so they can make those modifications. I'll also mention to you, if you had a chance to look at the staff report, staff wasn't confident that the site met the open space requirements of the code. And so the applicant revised the plans, submitted in that revised plan today, and that's why you see that word revised in parentheses on the graphic to the left. So we're confident that what the applicant is proposing now meets the minimum open space requirements for the multifamily development. As I mentioned to you, the conditional use permit is for 60 dwelling units. It's a mix of 31 bedroom and 32 bedroom units. Again, at a gross density of 25 dwelling units to the acre. Access again is Locust Grove, and that is the only access that they'll have. I know typically we like to have more accesses for these types of developments, but because this is a multifamily development and it's under 200 units, the code does not require an additional access point. So the fire code allows you, I'm putting my Chief Barn Journal hat on for you this evening so we don't go down that discussion for another access to Franklin because it's not going to happen. But essentially, you can have a multifamily developments, you can have up to 200 units before you need a secondary access. So this is well under what's required by code. But just to make, because the property to the south of this project is also part of that mixed-use designation, we are recommending cross-access to that piece so that it could integrate, or potentially a new access point could be provided or readjusted in the future if something were to happen on that property. We want to make sure we limit those access points in the near future. Amenities for this site, we're looking, you have to have 3 qualifying amenities, 1 from quality of life, open space and recreation, and the applicant is proposing enclosed bike storage, a community garden, and then a children's play structure. If you had a chance to review the staff report as well, originally the applicant was proposing an interconnected pathway along Locust Grove that ran along the south side of the detention facility and ran up the east side of this development to add it as a recreational amenity. Because of site constraints, that was removed, and they elected to go with the tot lot, which we think is a better amenity for this site, as there is limited parks in this area. They're about, what, a mile, 2 miles down the road to Story Park, if I remember correctly. And then the applicant also provided revised open space to show how they're meeting the intent of the code. And then here are the conceptual building elevations that you guys look at as well. Again, it looks like it's a mix of fiber cement panels, window stucco, synthetic wood cladding, and then all done in neutral colors. So again, more of a modern aesthetic on the site. Keep in mind that this site will be screened somewhat by that ACHD facility. There are some topographies on this site as well, so the site is built up a little bit compared to what that from the detention pond as well, but a lot of that parking will be screened from the adjacent streets. Had a chance to look at the public record before the hearing tonight. It looks like we did receive written testimony from Travis Perrin. He's actually represents the Intermountain Wood Products property, which is just directly a couple lots south of this. If you remember, they came through and annexed in a piece of property with the IL zoning district to develop a warehouse. So he's concerned with that access to Locust Grove and how that will impact some of the, he's fearful that the additional traffic, it's a dangerous situation with the amount of truck traffic that will be coming in and out of that roadway to serve their facility. So again, staff is recommending with the conditions in the staff report, and we'll conclude my presentation, stand for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. The applicant like to come forward?
I believe she's online.
Online, okay.
Should be Jory. Jory.
Jory, you can speak now.
Hello, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes, we are. We'll need your name and address for the record, and the floor is yours.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Jory Delgado. I'm here with Realm Venture Group located at 1109 West Main Street, Boise, Idaho 83702. And I'm here to discuss the Meridian OZ apartments located at 1475 East Franklin Road in Meridian, Idaho. Bill did a great job of reiterating that staff report, and Sonia did a great job of writing that staff report. I appreciate her help on getting me some of those comments early on and helping me make these adjustments so that I could come back and hopefully get an approval on this quickly. A couple items that I would like to just make a note of is that our property is within 1 mile of a Valley Regional Transit of Route 30 Pine. Our development agreement modifications, we do agree with all of your guys' provisions that are being requested to be carried over from the previous development agreement. We plan to keep the outside lighting, perimeter fencing, and drainage sections of the previous DA agreement and carry it over to our new one. Also, the access point, we do plan to provide a cross access, ingress, egress, easement, and driveway with a pedestrian walkway to the property to the south for future connectivity, which we hope that there can be some connectivity on that. And I know that we've had a little bit of discussion about that, but nothing too extensive. But we do plan to have that easement there just in case that there is that potential of having a future development there. And then another item that popped up was the trash enclosure. We are more than happy to relocate our trash enclosure to wherever is needed. I know in the staff report, it said that it was that they wanted us to relocate it to the east boundary and add a recycling receptacle, which we are totally okay with adding the recycling, which we had anticipated adding the recycling in there anyways. But the location of it is also going to be up to Republic Services and where they feel it is best that they can pick up the trash on a daily basis or whatever their schedule is for our development. And then bike parking also came up. We have already added a bike rack for every building. So every building has their own bike rack, along with, we also have a covered bike rack parking. That's one of our amenities. I have not submitted one of our covered bike parking plan yet, just because we don't know what it actually is going to be built out as, but it will be a fully enclosed bike storage facility for the residents. And then as Bill noted, our common open space has been revised, and we do now meet the minimum standards for common open space, and as well as our landscape plan. Our landscape plan has also been modified to meet all of those comments that have been made in the staff report. And then I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you, Jory. We have questions for the applicant or staff?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
for the applicant, is the 60 units or 5 buildings with 12 units a make or break deal for this project to go forward? This is pretty high density for this small L-shaped space. If we were to discuss it, would any consideration be to lessen the density of the number of units?
I would say that 60 units would be what we're set at. It would be hard for us to go any lower than that. And I feel that we've been pretty code compliant with the 60 units and meeting the common open space and the amenity requirements and the ACHD requirements. So I think 60 units is probably our minimum that we're willing to hit.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question real quick on the, this is going to be a right-in, right-out onto Locust Grove. Is that correct, Bill? Fairly certain that would have to be, but.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And then as far as the right-in, right-out, is that going to be just painted, or is that going to be enforced by some, like a curbing? I don't know if we know the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't think they use curbing or striping anymore. They're going to use a curb. They like to put
Yeah.
that curving out there and make sure it works, it functions.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I would be curbing.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Schmidt, go ahead.
Another question about the fire department. I noticed a conspicuous absence of comment here, and if there are any developments that I would especially like to see, consideration of fire department response times. It's those that are especially dense. And just curious again to you, Mr. Chair, or any other commissioners or staff about any potential reasons that we know that those comments might not be there, and just any discussion around fire response times and safety.
Sure. Bill, I'll let you take that. You
Yeah,
know the fire
Mr.
department.
Chair, Commissioner Smith, this may be one where everything works right, and so fire's like, it's good. Fire station's just a mile down the road, so I think we're good on fire response times. 2, multifamily require sprinklers, so they're gonna have to have a fire sprinkler system. So I think, and then access, again, as I mentioned, it meets the fire code for access, and then all of the other requirements as far as code compliance with building codes, that will happen at the time that they submit for building permits. So again, if I had to guess why you didn't see a lot of that information, it's just because we still get comments from fire department. They just may not raise to the level of where you're typically seeing it. So fire does provide comments as part of the packet in Laserfish, but in this particular case, it was in line with what they anticipated with their goals.
Good to hear. Thank you very much.
Mr. Race, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, probably a question for staff. The single ingress and egress on Locust, that's a highway district decision. Is that accurate? Yeah. What happens if the property owner doesn't want to give an easement to the south? The city has no control in that transaction, right?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, we do. But that would happen at the time of annexation. So that property to the south is currently in the county. So whenever they came in and requested annexation, we're gonna pre-app with them. Okay. We're gonna let them know that the development to the north reciprocated an easement to them, and that we expect them to work with them on that. But because we anticipate other properties to the south also doing that or providing that access in the future too. So if I can go back to that area real quick, so you can see here, there's still a few properties that are in the county there. That's what that white is in the center graphic here, so that RUT. So that's where it's going to be critical for us to make sure that we look at the current accesses to the county properties, and then through redevelopment in the city, that our code does speak to cross-access when you don't have local street access. And we are working with legal currently to tweak some of that language, but in this particular case, yes, we have every right. It's part of our code requirements to do that when it's annexed into the city. We can't require them to do anything now, because they're not under our rules.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. I too think there's only one direction to go when you exit the property, and there's 3 other highly probably sought after directions from those people. So good to know. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Smith, go ahead.
Question for the applicant. Curious to know, have you heard, or have they heard any feedback from Mr. Perrin or other local community members? And if so, have they taken any efforts to work to accommodate concerns? / would they be willing to work with community members like Mr. Perrin to ameliorate concerns going forward?
I have not heard from anybody, but we are willing to work with any comments or concerns that we do have from anybody in the surrounding areas.
Real quick question on the one of the comments in the staff report was on there are no sidewalks that go from the parking area into the entrances. Is that something that How will that be mitigated or remedied?
We do have sidewalks, so we do have a pathway that goes down this side. I don't know if you guys are able to see my mouse on the screen.
No, we're not.
Okay. We do have sidewalks and walkways that are attached to each building and around each building. Around each parking area, there is a walkway. And then when it does cross the road, there is a crossing path there that will be noted with either some striping or a different type of material. But there is some type of walkway that surrounds each building.
Okay. Any other comments? Any other questions? Applicant or staff? Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for public testimony?
We do, Mr. Chair. Ann Witherall? Or Witherell?
Okay. Thank you, Jory. We'll be back to you shortly.
Thank you.
Good evening, ma'am. Yep, just grab that microphone. We'll need your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Ann Witherell, 215 South Locust Grove Road. I live to the south of the proposed development, and I just had a conversation with the other owner. I guess I am now the homeowners association. So, most of my concerns I would like to have taken up with the developer at a neighborhood meeting. One was proposed, I think it was back in was it July. I showed up at the meeting. We did 20, 30 minutes. Nobody showed up except the owner from, their operations manager from Basilite, up around the pumice factory around the road on Franklin. We had a nice chat for about 20 minutes. Nobody showed up, so we went home. It was 1,000 degrees. It was rescheduled for a month later. I went, same story, except Mr. Murphy, the operations manager, didn't show. I have his card. He's a witness. Nobody showed at those meetings. I would have shared these concerns with them then. So since we were not contacted about any further meetings or notified about anything other than the initial planning and zoning meeting, which was rescheduled, and not notified about any other meeting, I'm here to say that yes, I do share the concern with the one in and out on Locust Grove. I have no plans to sell my home. There is another issue that the dumpsters, I'm glad that those will possibly be moved, but they're very noisy when they collect them. There is safety in the pond on the corner. How do I draw on this thing? Oh, there.
What do you need, ma'am?
Right there is that big pond. It's a beautiful, it's full of cattails, marshes, beautiful birds in the summer, fall. It's also a nice attraction for children to get in and play in and drown in. That's a safety hazard. I hope they can address that. The transition between the developer or the development and the property immediately to the south, I don't see any significant transition there at all. Mitigation for sound, light, noise, foot traffic, for example. There is it's supposed to be 20 feet, it's not. Transition between my property and the development behind me, the light industrial. I don't want 10,000 children, people of, I don't know who they are, traipsing behind my property. What kind of foot traffic mitigation will there be? I don't know. There's also the minor problem of the irrigation. The irrigation pipe goes behind the property here. It's never on any plats ever, and I've been dealing with city council now for 20 years. And there's even a part of this irrigation pipe that's under a parking lot. Not a good place to maintain it, but when we address it at this point, there's not that problem. The irrigation pipe is where we get our irrigation water, and it's very important to us, especially my neighbor who has an acre field. I have an acre field. It's for watering plants and pasture, and our kids like to play in them. Without it, we would be using well water, which is a great expense on the pump, especially. So that needs to be addressed and maintained. The overflow water, the drainage is fine. It drains down into this area here and into 5 Mile Creek, and also into the decorative pond at the entrance to the light industrial subdivision behind me.
Yep. Ma'am, I'll need you to wrap up real quick if you would.
Oh, I'd love to. I could also go on for a few dozen things, but those are the main ones. Safety especially. I have 2 grandsons that live with me. One of them catches a bus, and with all the traffic making right-hand turns onto Locust Grove Road, which is no longer a small side road, it's a 5-lane highway. There are safety concerns about children catching school buses. Anyway, for now, I will be quiet and sit down for now.
All right.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Madam Clerk?
We have a Lindsay Ucci.
Good evening. Just need your name and address for the record, and the floor is yours.
My name is Lindsay Uechi.
Can you speak right into the microphone there?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I live at 1376 West Whitehall Drive, and I also own the property directly south of this application. So before I begin what I was going to say today, I do want to mention that Ms. Delgado said that she has not received any public comments, and we have emailed back and forth with my concerns. Okay. So good evening. I would like to begin by thanking the Commission for making information on the ongoing development of Meridian accessible and transparent for its residents. Without this service, my input tonight would not have been possible. I'm also thankful to the Commission for upholding the Unified Development Code by requiring cross-access easement, lighting restrictions, and enforcing a standard width and landscaping in the buffer zones, and also acknowledge my appreciation for the developmental agreement modifications, which requires the continuance of accepting drainage and requiring a dividing fence. I would request, in addition to the fence on the property line, the Commission consider implementing an additional fence through the industrial zone buffer on the western edge. Without such provisions, residents of the apartment complex can easily access the neighboring single-family lots through their backyards. There is a high concern for the proposed location of the trash receptacle in the southwest corner. Because of the odor and noise caused by this, I requested it be relocated or at minimum moved at least 5 feet away from the property line. The final and largest concern for the proposed development, which I'm sure has been a concern for the Commission as well, is the safety for motorists on Locust Grove. The proposed property has low visibility due to its unique L shape, which is wedged behind a retention pond. The only proposed entrance and exit comes after a very quick turn on a very busy intersection. If one of the up to 180 residents of the complex was not prepared for this turn, they may stop short, creating a traffic and safety concern. If the turn is missed, the subsequent driveway, 30 meters to the south, is likely to be misused as a turnaround point. This unpaved driveway proceeds for over 300 feet towards a single-family home. The single-lane driveway can only safely accommodate one direction of traffic and ends at a garage where the turnaround area is very limited. Please also consider the impact of all motorists proceeding on Locust Grove, as many citizens of Meridian choose to travel on Locust Grove as an alternative to facing the traffic on Eagle Road. The impact of this poorly visible and quick turn will remove this alternative route option. I request that if the Commission still finds this to be a reasonable design, that you would require traffic slowing measures in addition to a solution for protecting the right to private use of a private driveway on a private property. For the benefit of the commission, I would also like to add that the house depicted on the survey submitted for the proposed development is not of concern, as it was demolished in August of 2022. I sincerely appreciate you for all your services that you've provided to ensure a safe and flourishing city for myself, my family, and my neighbors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions? All right, you can go. Thanks.
There's no one else, Mr.
else?
Chair.
Anybody else like to testify? You can raise your hand. Don't see anybody online. All right. With that, would the applicant like to come back up and discuss what's been discussed with the the public comments?
I just have a couple of comments. It appears that the dumpsters were mentioned in both public comments. And again, we are more than happy to move the dumpsters to wherever necessary. But again, that is going to be in Republic Services. It's going to be up to them as to where we locate them and where they are able to easily access them day in and day out. So we are able to move those wherever they would like. But again, it's going to be at the discretion of Republic Services. And then it appears the safety of the right in, right out of Locust Grove came up a couple times. Again, we are totally open to making whatever safety measures need to happen at that right in and right out happen, whether that is a curb cut or some type of striping or whatever it is. We are totally open to that, as well as the pond. We do plan to have a safety measure as to a larger fence on that back, which if you guys have seen that fence, there is already a fence with some barbed wire on the top. If that needs to change, we're happy to change that to something safer. But we are open to any safety measures that need to happen. And that is all I have.
A quick question for you, as on the fencing portion of it. I was under the impression that the fencing would be not only the south, but it would be on the west. Is that not correct?
So all the fencing that is currently on that property, we plan to keep. Again, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but every fencing that is currently already there, we plan to keep unless advised by the city that we need to change. We're more than happy to change the fencing on any side of this property to make it better for any of the tenants, any of the safety of the public, but we are open to changing any of that fencing if that is an issue.
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, to the applicant, what kind of fencing is currently there?
There is currently just the typical chain link fence.
On both sides?
That's correct.
And is it the standard 6 feet, or does it also have barbed wire like it around the retention pond?
Around the retention pond, there is barbed wire on the top of it. Around the exterior of the lot, it is just regular chain link fencing.
Commissioner Grace?
And that was, how high is it?
I believe it is 6 feet, but I'm not certain. I can go out there and measure that just to be exact, but I believe it is 6 feet.
Okay. Anything else? All right, Jory, if there's nothing else, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And with that, I will take a motion to close the public hearing for H 2022-0073 for the Meridian OZ Apartments.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0073 for the Meridian OZ Apartments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, public hearing is closed. Discussion?
I'll start, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead.
What does a commission do when an applicant dots all the i's and crosses the t, yet it still feels like they're putting everything in that they possibly can for the sake of putting it in. This is a very strange project because of the retention pond in front of it and ACHD's requirements. 60 units on this L-shaped parcel with a very narrow in and out seems very compact. And looking at the aerial views of the area, there are townhouses, there are single-family houses, there's an LDS church, there are businesses. So the product fits right, but it's just, I'm uncomfortable with the number of people within this very small space going in and out of Locust Grove. I think the product is right. It should be multifamily housing. There are, as far as I know, there are no 3 stories within the current vicinity. There's industrial behind it. I would like to see something with maybe 2 stories or townhouses that would be less dense, but the applicant says that that's not financially feasible. So I'm struggling with this because even though they have followed code of R40, they have done their amenities, they have done everything that, the city has asked, but it doesn't mean it's the right density for this space. So I would be actually in favor of denial.
Commissioner Grace?
Mr. Chair, I would echo some of those comments from Commissioner Lorchner. The density is what's given me some concern. It is a tough piece of property, for sure. And whatever they do, I would hope there is ability to, particularly since there's no access from Franklin, to move the dumpsters as far away from the homes to the south as possible. And I do think they need to address the fence on the west side and make sure it's adequate for the pond. I think the public comments were dead on that there is a potential safety concern there for kids and whatnot if there's an ability to get to the pond. So those are the things I'd like to see them address. It is a tough piece of property. The traffic is, I already asked a question about that earlier. I don't know that I would go, I'm going as far as denial. I guess I'd like to see what the other commissioners have to say. There is bike storage though, Mr. Chairman, which I'm sure makes you happy.
I like the bike storage idea, absolutely. Commissioner Rivera?
Mr. Chairman, I'm in agreement. It's a tough property. I think they're trying to do everything they can to accommodate, and I would like to see more of that to work with what was stated today by the public, especially with that fence. And also, it's tough just that one in and out on Locust Grove, especially, if you have Republic Services, big trucks coming in and, coming in around, and all the traffic of having 60 units can be a safety concern as well. But just, I guess I want to see a little bit more clarity on how that's going to be, worked out, where the dumpsters are going to end up, and then, and the fence. What other fence options are there that they're willing to accommodate for more of less noise and safety from the other adjacent properties?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Smith, feel free.
At risk of turning this horse into glue, I agree. This is a very difficult location. And I do want to comment, there's 2 sides to this coin. I do want to comment, I appreciate the proximity to the VRT stop. And I think that, given the comprehensive plan and the need for a diverse mix of housing and a diverse mix of density, I think there is a place for housing that is dense and perhaps this dense. I do think that there needs to be some consideration beyond the other concerns raised about, if we're one of the benefits of this property being dense and being close to housing, or close to public transit, if that's being presented as a benefit, I'd like to see some more commitment to encouraging residents to use public transit when possible. Like I said, one of the first things out of my mouth this evening was land use planning is transportation planning, in my opinion, and I think that it's tough because, to be frank, there's not as much infrastructure, public transit infrastructure, as some might like related to this housing and this dense of housing, but it's kind of a chicken and the egg problem of you have to have enough customers to make the public transit worthwhile, but you also have to have public transit to serve a relatively dense area. So those are some of my concerns. I think having heard some of this testimony and giving the benefit of the doubt, it seems to be there's been some miscommunication and confusion. It's all good. My time is up. I'm waiting for the. It seems to be, with a good faith position, it seems to be that there's been some miscommunication or some confusion about communication between opportunities to communicate between residents and local stakeholders and the developer. To give Commissioner Grace some insight to where I'm at, I also don't think I'm at the spot of preferring a denial. Having been new here, I'd like to express that I don't know how much good continuance would do, given kind of some of the heavy lifting of some of these, or what standard practices are, but I just wanted to throw out kind of where I'm at. I think, if anything, a continuance might be preferable to my position, but I also don't know how much is accomplishable within the limits of that.
Mr. Chair?
Yep, go right ahead.
And it's probably been discussed before, but there's a reason why the properties don't start further closer to Franklin and not as close to Locust Grove, where that's going to be your access point. I know it's a weird shape L, but it just seems like that first building is really close to the Locust Grove.
Well, I'll weigh in here. So I'll give the careful what you wish for speech here. So, and I mean, in looking at this, if we were to, request that they do 2 stories instead of 3, I would imagine that's, what we would end up with is we'd probably end up with another building. They're going to take the adequate space that they have and try to, eliminate some of the parking that they have or some of the features that they have in order to, fit as many of the units in there that they possibly can. Townhomes and things like that seem like a good idea, but now all of a sudden you're going to have buildings right on the property lines, which I think in the future will actually inhibit, traffic flow or the ability for them to use another road in order to get out to Franklin, or another way to even get out to Locust Grove. So I do share the heartburn with Locust Grove, that being the only in and out, and it being a right in, right out only. So that's going to make it difficult for folks that live there. They're going to have to go, essentially they're going to have to wind around, cross the freeway, go over to Eagle Road, and go over to, Meridian Road or whatever to come out on the freeway. So hopefully we don't see a lot of illegal U-turns out of here, but I would imagine that will be par for the course. Where this is at, there's actually a lot of light industrial, a lot of jobs in this area. So, with the bike storage that they have there, hopefully that, will help to motivate people to, use that kind of transportation. I'm a person that does that myself. Do I wish it could be something else? Yes. Does it check all the boxes? Does it meet everything? Yes. Could it be something else? Possibly, but I don't know that we would get any better than this as far as what we can do with it in the future. So that's my thoughts. Helpful or not.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask one question of staff?
Absolutely.
He looks like he's busy right now, so I'll give him
Bill, we got a question for you when you're ready.
Bill, can you tell me what the proposed density is in relation to the the density range that's allowable there?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission.
You probably already told us, Bill, but
Yeah.
maybe just remind me.
Commissioner Grace, I did. So so that's what I tried to describe to you in my presentation is the graphic on the right is what was approved in 99, different comp plan designation than what we have on the books today. But that was approximately 15 dwelling units to the acre, the project on the right. So let's fast forward. ACHD comes in and says, we're widening the road, we're redoing the intersection, we need a pond site. So they come and they take a 2/3 of the property and they develop that retention pond, and we're left with this L-shaped 2.37 acre piece of property. So the current comprehensive plan designation for this site is mixed-use community. Now, under that land use designation, we anticipate densities between 6 and 15 dwelling units to the acre, and this is at 25. So you can see there's quite a range there. It's definitely up towards the higher spectrum. But keep in mind, to our point, at least in our analysis in the staff report, we realized it was a stretch. It is higher than what we anticipate. But given the circumstances of what's occurred on the property and that they were entitled to somewhat 96 units and they were decreasing with this project, it made sense to support the density that they're proposing here, provided they meet all the dimensional standards of the code. And that's why, to your point, by the time you look at the required open space, the required parking, and just how narrow this and the odd shape of this property, the only way you're probably going to get any kind of density on this site is to go vertical. And that's the reality here. But I can tell you, we've pre-apped on this property for 2 or 3 years, and we encouraged applicants to go change it to industrial. As we mentioned to you, back in, Kent Brown was here in front of you, when we changed the comp plan on the Intermountain property to industrial, we thought the same thing. We're slowly carving away at the mixed-use community designation in this area, and when you do that, you kind of just pinch everything into a little corner that may not always make sense at the end of the day. And that's where staff is. We've got a balancing act. We know we have zoning in place, we have an entitlement there, and now we have to make the most out of an odd situation, and that's where we're at today, I guess, the way to put it. And so keep in mind that the only way this is going to move forward is if council approves that DA modification. So that's kind of the caveat. Again, your purview tonight is it compatible? It's a conditional use permit. Is the density right? Is the open space right? Do you feel like the parking is right for the site? There are 3 above minimum code requirements. So again, there's no other places to park here. So if you have a party, you have guests, you have 3 people renting 1 space, parking could be an issue. But again, the project before you tonight does meet minimum code requirements.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Go right ahead.
I have some additional advice or some input for the commission, but I want to ask a clarifying question first of Mr. Parsons. So I just want to clarify, Bill, that we talked about the current comprehensive plan is mixed use. Current zoning allows, however, for 40 units per acre, correct?
Mr. Chair, Council, not necessarily. There is nothing in the code that refers to density. Density is all driven by comp plan these days. So
Let me ask the question differently. What is the zoning district today for this L-shaped parcel?
It is R40, which again, when you look at the purpose statement of the code, of the zoning ordinance, it'll say it's for apartments, higher density, intensified residential uses. So that's kind of where we've landed. It's not quite 40. I don't want to skew the discussion tonight talking too much about density, because density is not driven in code. Density is all driven by comp plan. And given the fact that, again, this was a larger piece, a piece of it taken by a government agency and reduced, it does make it a little unusual, if that's the best way to say it. So again, your purview tonight, if you feel like, I know Sonia and I talked about it when we were writing the staff report about density and how to analyze that, and that's why we did go back and look at the research and look at the previous comp plan and try to understand the rationale of the body back in 99, 2000 to see how they felt this was right, and then what happened with ACHD. So at least we can put all the cards on the table for you and make that decision. Again, if this commission were to say no more than 2 stories, you're going to get 40 units. It's not going to change the design, or unless they want to add that additional building to your point, Commissioner Seal. But you lop off a story, it's still the same design. And again, to your point, we've met with many different people, told them to lay this out this way, move the buildings away from the detention pond, because we were concerned about the barbed wire fencing and all of that, to put the parking up against that area. That way you move the living space away from that. And we just, as you know, we try not to design on the fly here. So I think, again, if this body, you have the option tonight. You can move it forward with approval or denial, or if you feel like you want to see changes to see if it can increase that compatibility, redesign it a little bit to require more fencing, or have a vinyl fencing, or move some buildings differently on the site, but still meet the parking and the open space requirements. That's certainly within your purview tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to try to clarify from a legal perspective, and I don't want to conflict with Bill from his planning or in his planning hat, but I want to just say that courts will interpret. So let me back up and say we have 2 different things at play. They both relate to one another. We have a comprehensive plan, which is an aspirational document and talks about how we want our community to grow on a going forward basis. And we have zoning districts. And as Bill just mentioned, the zoning on this particular parcel is R40. It has a comprehensive plan in our future land use map. It has contemplated for mixed use. That's aspirational. It's not an entitlement. So I guess I want to impress upon, from a legal perspective, the zoning is the entitlement, and that is R40 zoning. The density being proposed here is consistent with that zoning district. So from a legal perspective, my advice to you is you focus from what the entitlement is. The entitlement is the zoning district, and the comprehensive plan is informative but not the driving factor. That's thought number 1, and Bill can help me out here if I'm misstating something. The second thing I'll say, though, is that the city does have some discretion here, both this commission but ultimately the council, because we have a development agreement that contemplated 15 units per acre, and the applicant is seeking a modification to that development agreement that would increase that density considerably. So that is a discretionary action on the part of the city council. The council is not required to amend the development agreement, and it's certainly not required to amend it in such a way that would increase the density. So I think really from the city's perspective, if the density is a concern, both for the commission and later for the council, I would focus on the development agreement. For this body, that's not really before you tonight. You certainly can make a recommendation to the council that says, from the commission's perspective, additional density is not desirable. We don't think the council ought to amend the development agreement to allow for this additional density. I think that's all perfectly fine. But I guess back on that first topic, I really want to reiterate that the zoning district today is the entitlement for this property, and that is R40. So we need to keep that in mind as you deliberate and as you make a recommendation to the city council. So that's my advice for the commission this evening. Bill, if I missed the mark on that, let me know.
Thank you.
I agree with council. That makes a lot of sense.
Appreciate that. Always welcome your comments and your guidance to keep us on track for sure. So, is there any discussion on that? Further comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Right ahead.
I'm thinking back and I'm trying to strike a balance here because I know there's two kind of disparate thoughts that I'm holding in my head at the moment, and one of them is, and I don't, Kurt, please let me know if this is ex parte. I don't believe it is since it was prior to my appointment, but I know in our conversations when I was interviewing for this commissioner job, something stuck out, or this commissioner position, if only it were a job. When we were interviewing, one thing that stuck out to me was the mayor expressing, hey, if there are questions that are less tangible and less code-related, that is something that the council should be able to grapple with as elected officials. At the same time, I know there's kind of a desire for us to not send open questions to council and load their plate up with things if we're able to kind of answer those questions and find some solutions for them. To that point, I do think that this is, now that I think about it more, I really don't know what a continuance would accomplish. So I'm actually in the position where, and I'm not making a motion here quite yet because I'd like to leave this open to some more discussion, but I'm supportive of recommending this to council, but also making clear some of the issues that the developer is going to face if they don't, if residents and local stakeholders do show up and say we still haven't been able to communicate with them, they still haven't responded to us and answered our questions, or we still haven't seen any discussion around fencing and right in, right out pedestrian traffic mitigation. But as we said, I don't know that there's much that's going to benefit from a continuance here, and I don't think a denial is the answer either. So, food for thought.
Yeah, I mean, to me on this, I struggle with the right in, right out again, but I don't know. I mean, if somebody wants to, go the way that Kurt had talked about a little bit in here, as far as recommending to council that they not allow the DA modification to go above the the density that's in that existing agreement, and that's perfectly that's something that can be considered in the motion that you make. But I mean, for me, it's again, I mean, if we limit these to 2 stories instead of 3, I think we get an additional building. If we try, to scale it back, then, it might just make this to where it's a very, very cramped location to live, where I think the parking's close, but I can see that there's, pretty adequate parking that's provided here. I mean, about the only concern that I have, really with the right in, right out is the where they show the giant trees right there by Locust Grove. It would be nice to have that wide open, kind of with nothing inhibiting your view of the traffic that's going to be coming your way. But other than that, infill's tough. This is a really, really tough piece of property right here. So I'm not seeing anything that makes me, really adamant about denying it. And I just know that we've had stuff come in after we recommend a denial and it gets denied, and then the next thing that comes in is like, boy, I wish we could have that project back. So that's where I'm at on it. I mean, I could definitely see it going to council.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
in sketching out a little bit of a motion here, just drawing upon maybe some of your experience, are we just punting to the council, which I'm sure they wouldn't appreciate if we said, well, give that some thought, consider it? Or should we say, you should or shouldn't accept that density in the development agreement? So just based on some of your experience, because the way it kind of reads now is that they should consider a lower density, but I don't know if that's helpful to them.
And that's, again, if whoever makes the motion, if you feel strongly about the density piece of it, I would definitely recommend. That's not in our purview to approve or disapprove, but we are a recommending body to council, so that can go into the motion if somebody feels, if you feel strongly about it, and then we're going to vote on it and see if everybody else does, and if not, then we'll see where we go again.
Mr. Chairman, I would be ready to make a motion, but I don't want to jump in front of anyone else if there's further discussion to be had.
Anyone else?
Sure, I just have a two quick procedural questions, or I guess one quick procedural question
Go right
around, and this is more of just kind of trying to fine tune some things, but there are two requests in this file number, and so the question is around: is there any possibility to divide the question, or is there any willingness to do so, and how that might impact, for example, approving the CUP but requesting a denial on the development agreement modification? Is that doable? Is that reasonable? Is that desired at all?
Well, I was going to say, I know Kurt was reaching for his microphone there, but I almost have an answer to this. I'll take a crack at it, and you tell me how wrong I am. But I think if we went that route, number one, I don't know if it's something that we can do as part of the process. But number two, if we approve the CUP, the conditional use permit, but then recommend a denial on what the entitlement is based on, I think that would probably put us in a legal bind, to be perfectly honest. But is that, and Kurt, feel free to jump in and correct me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think I'll just say in general on this issue or other issues, the commission can take issues individually in terms of, a motion on topic A, then topic B. In this instance, I would recommend that you not do that for a couple reasons. One is, really, if you look at our code, the commission is not really a recommending body with respect to development agreements. It's actually the department director that recommends to the city council. The reason it's in the discussion today, however, is because it sort of goes hand in glove with the CUP discussion. It's almost impossible to separate them. So I think, to the extent the commission entertains a motion later that discusses the development agreement or the proposed modification to the development agreement, that would make some sense because it is so closely interwoven with the CUP itself. But to try to break them apart, I think wouldn't make as much sense because really this body is not the recommending body with respect to modifications to development agreements, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So that would be a thought there. And then secondly, I along the lines of Chairman Seal, it would seem odd, I think, in the sense counterintuitive, I guess, to recommend approval for the CUP, knowing that the density is not a good fit for the commission, and you're not prepared to recommend that to the council. It seems sort of contradictory, I guess, in the sense that they sort of cancel each other out. So it seems to be inconsistent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Spitballing, but I appreciate the.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, if I could just kind of tag on to Kurt's comments too. Keep in mind, we just amended the ordinance that when a CUP accompanies a DA mod, you're a recommending body at that point. So it has to go up to, we shouldn't bifurcate, to Kurt's point, we shouldn't bifurcate the applications. And looking at the development agreement in the staff report, it says they're allowed to develop up to 40 dwellings to the acre in it. So they have, to Kurt's point, this really is more of a development agreement issue more than whether or not you're making a finding it's consistent with the comp plan or not. Again, they're allowed to build up to 40 units to the acre currently. And then with the modification and tying them to this site plan, it's essentially saying you're going to develop 25 units to the acre based on what they're proposing now. So council will have to look at that and determine whether or not they will allow that or not as part of that DA modification. Just wanted to clarify that too. So very good points tonight. It is, again, a very, very odd situation that we're in this evening with this type of project where you have so many moving parts. Essentially, almost 30 years later or whatever. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me how we're here doing this, but
Right.
it does get tricky when zoning gets in place, and that's why when we do all of our training with you, we try to make it very clear to you that zoning really kind of does trump comp plan.
Right.
And this is one of those cases where we have not only a DA and we have zoning in place, so we kind of have two things that we have to be very cognizant of as we deliberate on these types of applications.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Kurt. This is a good one this evening. I've learned a lot. We have any more discussion? Would anybody like to throw out a motion? Always happy to hear those.
Mr. Chairman, you're looking at me, so I...
Commissioner Grace, go right ahead. I wasn't trying to stare you down specifically.
And I invite anyone, if you feel like I get the wording wrong on this, to correct me, and we can redo it. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to the City Council of file number H-2022-0073 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of February 16th, 2023, with the following additional recommendations. One, that the applicant work to ensure adequate fencing around the entire property. Two, that the applicant work to ensure the appropriate placement of the trash receptacles. And three, that recommendation to City Council to consider a lower allowable density in the development agreement.
A second?
Second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded.
Mr. Chair, sorry, before you
Oh, go ahead.
deliberate, didn't mean to interject. Now, I like the last part of that motion. I think, but when you say consider a different density, are you saying that aligns with the current comp plan designation, or do you want to put a number on it, or do you just want to leave it open-ended? Typically, we like specifics, I guess.
Yeah.
Again, they're allowed to do 40 dwelling units to the acre. The plan's 25, comp plan says 15. So again, if it's your intention to have council deliberate on something else, I'll defer to Kurt too if he has any comments. But again, to me, tie it to something. Don't leave it arbitrary. Just think about density. Well, what do you want council to look at? That 15 is appropriate? What's the number for the body here? I don't know.
Well, Mr. Chairman and Bill, I
don't know
guess
if
I was...
Kurt even wants them to go that specific or not, but just want to make sure council knows what they're asked to do.
No, thank you for that. That's a good point. And that's why I sort of asked the question, are we just punting if we say, well, consider this?
Right. And the only feedback I'll give on that is that I think if you attributed the comment to the original development agreement, maybe look at density closer to the original development agreement. And that way it's understood. And there is, I mean, there's a timing issue here, you know, and I mean, in 1999, I was still young. So it's been a while. So, you know, I mean, we do have a long span of time here, so that is definitely going to play into it. So again, that's the only advice I would give on that.
Mr. Chairman, what if I modified my third recommendation to say that it's a recommendation to council to consider a lower allowable density more in conformity with the original
DA
when city council considers the modification to the development agreement that's currently on there.
Does the second still stand?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. All right. Looking around, making sure here. So It has been moved and seconded to approve file number H2022-0073 for Meridian OZ Apartments with their aforementioned modifications and suggestions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nay.
I hadn't even called for nay, but thank you. Motion passes. All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
would it be appropriate for a bio break?
Absolutely. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. We'll take a quick bio break. Thank you. All right, we are back. Now I would like to open the public hearing for item number H2022-0089 for the Millwood subdivision, and we will begin the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Last item on the agenda tonight is the Millwood subdivision. The request is for annexation and preliminary plat. The site consists of 4.11 acres of land currently zoned RUT in Ada County and is located at a physical property address at 1975 East Victory Road. As you can see here in the existing aerial map, there is an existing residence that is currently developed on this site, and it was approved through the county. I would also mention to the commission that this property does not have any public street frontage or access. It has access, but no public street frontage to this property. They actually take access across somebody else's property through an access agreement, and it ties into Victory Road, and that'll be part of the presentation tonight, but just wanted to make you aware of that. It's an unusual circumstance when you have don't want to say it's landlocked, but when you go to further intensify or further develop a property, we have to make sure that we have adequate street frontage. So you can also see here that the future land use map designates this property as medium density residential, in which we anticipate residential densities between 3 and 8 dwelling units to the acre. So as I mentioned to you, the annexation is going to be a little bit larger than the plat square footage, just because we require legal descriptions to go to the center line of the adjacent 8-mile lateral that runs along kind of the northwest portion of the project and then dives down along the east side as well. The applicant is here tonight to discuss with you, or excuse me, I should say, they're here to develop the site with a 17-lot subdivision and 4 common lots. The existing home will stay on one of the lots, so they're actually proposing to construct 16 new residential units on this particular property. There's also 2 common driveways that are proposed as part of the plat as well. Just like the earlier residential subdivision this evening, this property's access is contingent on the adjacent property to the west, the Teakwood subdivision that was approved. I did go drive by this site, not recently, but I know that that first phase of construction for that development is underway, so I anticipate, in this particular case, they're a little bit farther along than the first project tonight, so we do anticipate the public street frontage to be there sooner rather than later. The other interesting part about this, if you had a chance to look at the ACHD staff report, is ACHD is actually requiring this segment of local street to be dedicated, but they're only requiring them to construct it to the intersection. And this would just, again, be dedicated but not constructed, because that way, when the adjacent property to the east redevelop and that road is extended, it allows that construction to happen more easily, or alignments to happen without having to rip out existing roadway. So it's unusual for me to, at least for staff, to see them to say dedicate but don't construct. So I just at least wanted to point out that nuance to you. So essentially, all of this cul-de-sac and everything will be built. It's just this will be left out and constructed at such time as the road is extended in the future with the adjacent property. You can also see here how it ties in with the adjacent subdivision to the west, the Teakwood subdivision. So you can see how this is going to work. And then, as I mentioned to you, that current access that serves the existing home now, that will remain intact as an emergency access only. So the applicant will have to build a 20-foot fire lane here and then baller it so no one can use that roadway and impact the adjacent property owner. So I just want to be very clear on that, and that is a provision in the development agreement. That is only to serve as an emergency access until such time as that road is extension and we get that network created in the area. So just FYI on that as well. Again, the existing home currently has an address to Victory. When we keep existing residences, we have to make sure that the existing structures meet our R8 dimensional standards. They hook up to city utilities when they become available. And also the residents or future owners will also get a new address. So they will no longer have a Victory Road address. They actually will have to they will be assigned a new address once the subdivision records and the street names have been approved. So That's a lot of work to keep an existing residence as part of a development, just for your information on that. I'd also mention to you in the staff report, staff wanted additional transitioning to occur along the south boundary. So we are recommending that they lose one lot. Looks like Sonia has recommended that one lot's removed between lots 6 and 8. And then another lot is removed along the south boundary between lots 11 and 14. So this density could slightly decrease from the 4.14 probably into the 3.7 range or so, if I had to guess on that. I already touched on access for you. Because the site is below 5 acres in size, they are not required to have any open space. However, the applicant is proposing, I was hoping we had something in here in a colored graphic for you, but you can see here, there is open space plan. So up here in the northwest corner of the site, adjacent to the 8-mile lateral, there is a common lot that the applicant's working with the city to extend a multi-use pathway per our master's pathway plan. So they'll work with Parks Department on that. When it transcends through the site, traverses through the site, it will eventually cross in the location where this bridge currently exists and then go transition to the other side of the creek. So this segment of the pathway does cross through Teakwood. This site crosses the 8-mile lateral, goes on the east side of the creek, and then ties into Tuscany in a future date when that property to the east develops. Just to let you know, you probably see this graphic here. The Nampa Meridian Irrigation District has a fee simple lot adjacent to this property. So that's why you see it on this graphic, but it's not part of the plat itself because it's not the applicant's property to control or include it as part of a lot and block in this subdivision. The applicant did provide some sample home elevations for you to look at. Again, pretty consistent to what's already occurring in the area. Again, staff is supportive of it. We like the mix of materials on it as well. Looking at the public record, it looks like we did receive some public testimony on this from the representative from the Tradewinds HOA, which is one subdivision west of Teakwood Place. So that subdivision is located on the southeast corner of Locust Grove and Amity, or Victory, excuse me. They're concerned about the amount of traffic that's going to be generated, especially with the road construction starting in the area with the widening of Locust Grove and the roundabout extension at the intersection. So with that, staff is also, if you had a look at your hearing outline, we are recommending that 2 conditions of approval be included in your motion this evening, and those are on the hearing outline. So looks like we want to make sure that no road construction traffic is using that existing access on Victory Road. It needs to come from the adjacent subdivision. So we would like that added either in the conditions of approval. More than likely, the development agreement would be my preference, so that it's part of that contract. And then looks like we got some revised common drive exhibits, and we want to make sure amend the plat so it's consistent with the new configuration of those common driveways. So with that, staff is recommending approval, and I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Real quick, Bill, just the conditions that you talked about are documented with staff comments in the public record, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. That'll be helpful when making a motion. All right, would the applicant like to come forward, please? Good evening, sir. Need your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Todd Lakey with Borton Lakey Law, address 141 East Carlton Avenue, Meridian, Idaho 83642. Thank you, Bill. Let me make sure I can up and down this here. Okay, good. Well, I'll start out, Commissioners, by thanking staff for their analysis and their recommendation of approval. We appreciate that and agree with a large majority of the conditions. I'll mention a couple that we would like to see differently if possible. And then we do have our civil engineer online if you really dig into the plat and have some questions outside the lawyer zone and more in the engineer zone. So, Commissioners, I want to emphasize Bill did a good job talking about this. The comprehensive plan does call this out for medium density. It is an infill project, and that medium density is 3 to 8 dwelling units per acre. We're at about 4.16 dwelling units per acre, so we're at the low end. I know you've talked about density tonight being a concern sometimes, and in this case, we're at the low end. With that, staff was recommending that we take a lot out on the southern boundary and on the western boundary. Our preference would be, and our ask would be to leave those in, knowing that we are at the low end of the density for the comp plan as it stands. So it does fill with the comp plan. It is infill, which is encouraged, and staff did a good job as far as goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. We are compatible with existing zoning. There's a lot of R4 and R8 in the area. The project that's being developed, the Teakwood, is R8, and we're consistent with that R8 zoning. So let's see if I can just the pointer move on this. There it goes. So this is the Teakwood project to the immediate west. You can see the kind of lot configuration there in the red to the west of our site. And then this is the most current county assessor's map. You can see the road kind of being constructed there. My Google map actually had the pavement in. I didn't go out there and drive on it, but I think they are further along. So that's where we will be connecting. They're 33 lots on 7.4 acres, so their density is 4.6. So we're a little bit lower again at 4.1 on our site. And we will connect to that Teakwood and dedicate that right-of-way that Bill described that runs the connection to the east. Talk just a little bit about the landscape plan. There is a really nice home that's left on the property that will have its own lot at about 3/4 of an acre. It has a fair number of mature trees that will be leaving a number of those mature trees on the project. And those that we do take out, we have to mitigate under the landscaping ordinance. And we'll do that with the new landscaping that's put in. You saw some of the homes, commissioners. They are kind of diverse as far as the materials, the elevations. They do fit with what's in the area, as Bill described. We would like to add one condition. In our discussions with the folks that live to the south, they requested that we not have 2-story lots on those southern parcels. And we're willing and ask that you add that condition of approval, that we not have 2-story homes on those southern lots. So Bill covered this pretty well, but we will be dedicating that right away to ACHD here, and then if we do incorporate landscaping, we'll have that license agreement with ACHD. And they also want a sign that says this road to be extended. I've seen lots of friends live in subdivisions that has a nice kind of stop red and white sign, and for some reason they don't think that road might be extended in the future, so there'll be a sign to that effect. The pathway, or excuse me, before I talk about the pathway, the emergency access, there will be that 20-foot wide emergency vehicle access per the fire department requirements. That'll connect in with the existing driveway to that bridge that goes over the 8-mile canal and then out to Victory. And I think the requirement in the staff report was to put the bollards about 30 feet back from Victory to make sure that there aren't cars coming in and out onto that Victory entrance. And that fire district access is next to the common area open space, one of our common areas in open space to the north of that access. And then the pathway will run on the northern portion of the property there along the canal. We stay out of the canal's easement. They were concerned about that. We don't want to harm them, their operations. That pathway will be a 10-foot with landscaping on either side, 5 foot of landscaping on either side. And then it stops, this is at the city's request, there essentially at that fire department access and the bridge. And then the city does not require a pathway going further because that's the terminus of the pathway. So that can be incorporated into those lots that are there on that eastern boundary. Fencing on the pathway will be 4-foot open view fencing and then 6-foot privacy fencing around the perimeter of the project. There was a request in the staff report regarding that bridge that goes over the canal to either widen that bridge or install a separate pedestrian path bridge adjacent to that. Our preference would be not to do that. It can be a little challenging to get permission to have a bridge across an irrigation facility, but that bridge will now no longer be used for regular traffic coming and going. It will simply be for emergency vehicle use. So it would, when it's ultimately used, very open, very unused, and I think could accommodate continuation of that pathway without any further improvement or widening. Then I'll note here are the common lots there that abut the project to the west, and that's where the tot lot will be located. There was also a request in the staff report that we not include the fencing on that one boundary adjacent to the Teakwood subdivision, so you kind of have open space between the two projects, and we're amenable to that. We're happy to do that, not include the fencing along that boundary. And then just for your reference, the existing home, the driveway access there will remain in place, but the access for that lot itself will go along the top of the lot there. That's how they'll connect into the road. So with that, commissioners, again, we would ask that we not lose those two lots on those two sides based on our low end of the density in the comprehensive plan, and that the bridge remain as is. With that, commissioners, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Commissioners, we have any questions, comments for staff or the applicant? Commissioner Grace.
Mr. Chairman, maybe this is for staff or maybe it's for the applicant. In the report, it simply says that they're recommending one lot be removed for better transition to abutting future lots. Can you explain, or can staff explain what's meant by that? Because I do feel like they're under the density, and I'm questioning why that recommendation is there. So
I can respond, and I'll let Bill respond. I think part of the thought was our lots are going to be a little bit smaller because we have that larger lot with the existing home on it. But our density, again, is in conformance. We have a project that's slightly more dense than we are to the west. No request or comments from those folks to the west to eliminate a lot there. So I think that was kind of the basis, is to have larger lots. But again, we focus on that density being in conformance with the comprehensive plan.
yeah, I mean, I feel like it's just hard enough to make. Probably, you're trying to maximize your. So that, I guess, I would be questioning why we're doing that.
Well, I was going to say, Bill, can I mind if I comment on this one?
I think the applicant did a great job. I think that's right where staff was landing on it. It's just compatibility with the perimeter lots and make that
and there's
flow better.
Part of this too is you have one building on one huge lot. So if you took the density, if you took all the remaining property and took that one out of it, that skews it. So, I mean, we've heard that argued before, and that is correct, but there's no provision for it really. But again, the comprehensive plan is not code, so, I mean, that's kind of for us to determine, but that's one of the things that I see in applications like this. And I know infill's hard. I know people want to stay living in their house on a giant piece of land, that doesn't transition very well with the land around it. So I'm not Sonia, and I wouldn't pretend to be a city planner, but I can see that, in order to help with the transition with that one big lot, some of the lot, if you increase the lot size across the other ones and made that more compatible with what's adjacent to it, that would be a better fit for the plan overall. That's the way I've come to look at it, just through listening to other commissioners and some of the feedback that we've had on other applications that look very similar to this.
If I might just expound a little more, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Appreciate those comments. And I guess the fact that we haven't had the adjacent developer say they would like a transition or need some smaller lots on that western boundary. I would think normally the adjacent property owner might be the one that would drive that transition if there was a particular need. And then our request from those folks to the south was really just not to have two-story houses on that southern boundary. So we're trying to be responsive to them and address that concern.
Commissioner Lorchik?
Mr. Lakey, in regard to the common drive, is that going to be available for people to be able to park on it? Or is it just for access for those lots 4 through 7? 4 through 6.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lurcher, I'm not sure with that width. I don't think, and maybe Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, that it's designed to be parked on. So it's a drive aisle to be used by those lots. Parking would be in their driveways and their garages.
Thank you.
Sorry. Go right ahead.
I had this in my mind, but I forgot to ask it. But, Mr. Lakey, so I would tend to agree with you that it's probably not easy putting bridges over canals, but can you expound what's involved in that?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Grace, so that would require a license agreement with the Nampa Meridian Irrigation Company. And I've worked with them on various things in the past. They are very protective of their easements and don't like to see things under or over them unless absolutely necessary. And in this case, you know, the bridge is there. It's supported vehicular traffic to the home. It supports the emergency access traffic. We just don't feel that there's a need to pursue further approvals from the district when we have a bridge that will be rarely used by vehicles, and now in the future it would be easily used by those when the pathway's ultimately connected, because it'll be simply emergency vehicles. You can see a fire truck coming with its lights on and not have any concerns about conflict with pedestrian use.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I can certainly elaborate on this topic a little bit more because I'm right in the middle of one of these situations right now, and I'm being educated on the process. So it's what the Parks Department wants is to make sure that any pedestrian facility that we have, it mimics the width of the pathway. So if that road is wider than 10 feet, at least 10 feet or more, or wider, then we're good. If it were under that 10 feet, then we would certainly want them to build a new bridge to match the width of the pathway, and then design it as such that it maintains pedestrian safety. Now, the other piece of that is, one, the irrigation district, to the applicant's point, the irrigation district requires a license agreement, but there's also a step 2 process where they'll only allow the bridge if it's assumed and owned by the city. And so they don't want to take responsibility for it. So once a bridge is constructed and meets the specifications of the city, then we have to go back to city council. The applicant fills out the paperwork, transfer that asset to us, and we put it on the city council's agenda and they approve it. And I'm in a situation right now where an applicant wants to put in an 8-foot wide cargo container as a pedestrian bridge, and we're telling them we can't take ownership of that because we want it a minimum 10 feet wide. So that's how I'm getting involved in learning the process, that bridges are okay. They have to have rails, be designed certain way, meet the specs, which we don't have specs. We have things we'd like to aspire to. So the condition was really meant to say, we just want you to have 10-foot wide bridge. And so I think the existing bridge, as long as the language says converted to meet the city's requirements, meaning rails or something, whatever we have to do to make sure there's safety rails on it so you don't jump off the bridge, although rails, kids will be kids, I mean, but minimize those concerns, still have a certain aesthetic. Maybe the applicant, as we transition from this body to city council, will maybe give us some renderings or something, photos of what the bridge looks like now, and then how we can maybe retrofit it or use it in the future for a ped bridge. And at least we can have something in the development agreement or have something on record as to what the expectation is for that conversion.
Mr. Chairman, I think we can do that, do a little more. I can't tell you, and I don't know if my clients know exactly how wide the bridge is. 10 feet? 20? Oh, 19. Okay, so we're well, 19, 20, pick your number. We're well over the 10 foot when it comes to the bridge. So I don't know that there's a need for a condition there, but it sounds like as long as we can understand we can use that existing bridge when the time comes down the road, that'd be fine.
Okay, yeah, and the question I was going to throw out on the bridge was what would be needed in order to transition it from vehicular to pedestrian, bike access. So, I mean, a vehicle can go across a bridge and it'll go across and no big deal. You get people walking across it or biking across it. It's a little bit different situation. So you want to make sure it's something that's can be applicable for the traffic that it would need to bear now and in the future. So
that makes sense, Mr. Chairman. We'd certainly want to maintain its ability if that is depends on how development goes right down the road and what else is there for secondary access. But as long as that secondary access is still needed, we want to make sure it's still usable by those emergency vehicles and appropriate, as you mentioned, for pedestrian use.
Mm-hmm.
One other comment. Where you have the tot lot between lot 5 and lot 9, that seems like, so as a commission, we have found that common driveways can be problematic in our city. Even though there's parking on it, they share the driveway, but all the garbage cans need to go out to the cul-de-sac. So lot 4 would have to bring everything out all the way through, because I don't know if whoever the recycling and garbage people will go down, they can't turn around, they would have to back up. So you've got, a quarter of your cul-de-sac, that's actually a perfect, I don't know about size, but would be its own driveway, and you can eliminate one of the lots along the common drive to be able to kind of mitigate some of that potential issues among neighbors when it comes to sharing a common driveway. Would that be something under consideration?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lurcher, just want to make sure, I think we're seeing this the same. So the tot lot is here. This is an additional common lot here. So it's not, that one isn't a residential lot. I'm not sure if that's what you were describing, and then that would be the pathway and the open area adjacent to the open area in the teakwood. So those are both common lots there?
They're both common lots. So almost half of your cul-de-sac is not designated to housing, but common lots. Is that right?
Yep.
And have you and the developers discussed the placement of those two as opposed to houses right there?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Lurcher, I think we located that adjacent to the common area for the teakwood to have that kind of commonality. But we haven't really talked about making one of those a residential lot. I can ask about that if you'd like.
So on the other side of this pathway, when you go over to Teakwood, is that an open space as well?
I believe that I haven't seen it, but from staff's description, the fact that they want us to take the fence out, that Teakwood's common lot is in that location as well to help share that open space.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioners, any more questions for the applicant or staff? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify?
We do. Mary DeChambeau.
Good evening, ma'am. We'll just need your name and address for the record, please.
Mary DeChambeau. I live at 2015 East Victory Road, and I am the farm. The big little arrow, we call it the arrow. I could have answered a lot of those questions. This has been an interesting 20 years. I've debated and debated to tell you my story. I'm kind of glad there's not very many people here. The level of intimidation that I've experienced for 20 years from various developers and neighbors has been atrocious. But we're not here. We're here to talk about this. But I had been encouraged by the Ada County Code Officer to tell you some of the stuff that has gone on. It has a lot to do with the access road. What they're not telling you is this lot up here, yeah, it was approved, but the conditions of approval were never met for that road. So there is an easement, but the conditions of approval for that road were never finished. And I've been into Ada County Developer Services through the years, and they just kind of don't do anything. So let's talk about that, the bridge. It is 19 feet. One of the reasons why they don't want access off my piece of property is because it's 30 feet with the utilities inside the easement road. Okay, and the bridge has only had to be 19, and it's if you're scraping the sides. Okay, I measured it. They want another road to butt out onto my parcel. Even though I have the larger parcel, the parcel that's next to it is barely, I think it's under 2 acres. It's not even because of the easement road. So now they want to bring another road out called Richardson. But if you go back there, it's actually called Spring Glory or something like that. And if I had time, I'd tell you the reason why they wanted to change that name, but all of a sudden now it's called Richardson. I don't know if you're aware that Napa Meridian and I have been in talks about this very thing, and they said that they had no idea about all these bridges that they want to put along this whole section. So from Tuscany to Victory, if you put all these bridges in, there are going to be 4 bridges within a half mile on the 8 mile, okay? And they want me to put a bridge to meet the road that they're butting out, the Richardson road. You see the stub. That's why they don't know really what to do with it, because here's the deal. Napa Meridian usually has easements through other people's real property, okay? But in 1910, when they split and brought the, am I supposed to stop or what?
We'll let you keep going, but you'll need to wrap up pretty soon, please.
Well, I'm actually speaking for 3 other owners, too.
Okay.
So, anyway, they actually own that parcel. So there is actually a parcel between this subdivision that they're putting in, then there's the Napa Meridian parcel, and then there's my parcel. Okay, so this is where it gets tricky. There's an Idaho statute law that says if parcel A has an easement through it and it connects to parcel B, they cannot piggyback to parcel C. That's something they're not telling you. The other thing is we've been, there was conditions of approval that were put on, or conditions on that 1975's lot. And one of them was the height of the buildings that could be built back there. And when a resident of 1975, when they were building the houses back on Tuscany, he went back there and threw a fit. He wouldn't let them get their houses high because there was restrictions in that area. Now, I don't know if that follows through because I'm not being annexed in. I'm still rural transition, okay? So I don't know how this works, okay? So the other thing is, so Napa Meridian is kind of surprised about all these bridges, and yeah, he's right. I don't want to have anything to do with building on anything Napa Meridian actually owns. That was sold, because usually they just do, it's called a fee thing. And it's very rare, but there is few stretches where when they went and brought the canal through in the 1910s, there was a few landowners that said, no, you're going to buy my little strip. We're not going to just give you an easement. You have to buy it. And this is one of the ones. And then it runs into my piece of property. Okay, so let's talk about the pathway. They're running it along the side, but they want to come and have it go over the bridge, which is going to run in to a little area where my head gate is and where my irrigator and all of us kind of work. And then they want it to continue south on the east side of the canal, which is the 8 Mile, into Tuscany, okay? But we're still farming. I still have a head gate. I've had trouble in the past with kids opening my head gate. And the reason they don't want to continue it on the back side of their eastern border on the southeastern corner is because I own a little strip along there, okay? And Tuscany, we actually own that corner. If you look at the back part of Tuscany, you can kind of see where there's a corner. If you draw a corner from my acreage, you can kind of see where there used to, you could see where it would even out to a corner. We sold that to Tuscany for the purpose of, well, yeah, you could put a pathway back there. What did they do? They dug a hole. They did some ponds back there. And so they, because I actually had seen the plans. I have a plan thing here from way back almost, let's see, 1998, and I think this was printed in 2000, and the very plan that you're being presented tonight for these guys is on here. Over 25 years, and the reason why I'm a little bringing this up is because when Tuscany went in, they had on here one out on the back of my property, okay? But now I had to put in three of them, and so I've always asked the city of Meridian, why didn't you put an out in the back of Tuscany? This would have solved everybody's problems, and any of the terrorism that I have had to experience wouldn't have happened. I have been attacked by walking on my property. They sprayed me with water while I was checking ditches. Now, these gentlemen have bought it for the two that did all that stuff, okay? But it went on for 6 years. Now, you're talking about a pathway, and we're talking about that other lady and the safety about the little drainage thing. Well, I happen to know I'm surrounded completely, okay? And I can't tell you how many households have taken the bolt off those black and, what do you call those, fences? And they take them off. And Tuscany's really notorious for doing that because this house was the party house. And they would take it off along that canal at night, and then they'd walk around and go into 1975. So my question to you is, why don't they approach Tuscany and have them shave down a little area and continue that pathway on their subdivision and continue it on down? You can't put it on my piece of property because I own that little sliver. Now, here's the sad thing about it. If Ada County hadn't decided to throw me in jail while I was on that, I might have maybe donated it or maybe sold it for $10 or something. So they could have continued the pathway. But when you get falsely arrested over and over again for being on your property because simply you don't want to sell, it's just gotten out of hand. And I'm very concerned. So what?
Ma'am, you will need to wrap it up.
Okay, well, Kevin Horan said he wanted me to tell you that this is a potential Spurwig situation. Do you know what I'm referring to? The Spurwig situation where litigation went on for years and years and years because of all the trespassers. So the pathway, by bringing it back over on mine, you know, these people here have no open space, no free thing. They're going to have to walk around and do something, and let me just tell you, they're going to be falling in that canal unless we figure out fences. There's just a lot of things in here that I have questions about that I haven't had time to really even look at. You know, I want you to know that I have really looked at all this stuff, okay? But it just didn't get posted until last week. And so there's a lot of contingents. The other thing about the use of the access for the fire engine, he put in all the fire codes, but he left out one. I thought that was interesting. It's section B, it's obstacles, and you can't have power lines crossing a fire access road. And not only does it have power lines running all the way down my access road, they also cross on the front and on the back. So here's the thing. If you have parcel A with an easement, and it moves to parcel B, it serves parcel B. Idaho statute is that it cannot connect to parcel C.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else signed up?
We have a hand raised online.
Okay.
Vicky, you can speak now. Vicky, can you hear me? Vicky, can you unmute your mic? One last time, Vicky, can you unmute, please? It's your turn to speak.
Well,
I have no one else signed up, Mr. Chair.
okay. Anybody else? One other person in here. So, unfortunately, Vicky, we're not able to hear you. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Is there any other questions for the applicant, staff? Okay, the applicant like to come back up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, again, for the record, Todd Lakey, 141 East Carlton Avenue, Meridian, Idaho, 83642. Commissioners, we meet the requirements of the comprehensive plan. We're compatible with the existing zoning. We're at a lower density, as was described, than our adjacent and other, the project adjacent to us. We're at the low end of that density. I think we've kind of discussed our requests regarding the 2 lots and the bridge. I think with sufficient description of how that would work, we're okay with that, if that can be utilized for that. Commissioners, I can't really comment on past history or the lady's criminal history or interaction. I can simply say my clients have been gentlemen in regards to their proposal. The reason we aren't using that access that exists now is it's an access that wouldn't be appropriate for us to utilize for the subdivision. We would be essentially intensifying that use, and so we're tying into the adjacent subdivision as typically required by the city. And the stub road to the east is required by ACHD and the city's planning. I can't really comment about the other bridges along 8 Mile, but when we're talking about they or who wants those, it's part of the city's pathway plan. And we are incorporating the desired pathway on our property, and it won't proceed beyond that until development occurs on either end of that by those that are developing that property, our property to the east, if that happens at some point. As was discussed, we are incorporating fencing, we are incorporating open space as was previously described. So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I'd ask for your approval. Again, I'd be happy to answer questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Commissioner Smith? No?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I do have a question, kind of piggybacking on Commissioner Lorcher's question about the common lots. I know you said that that wasn't something that was discussed, but I guess you're thinking about it. Really the main thing that I don't love about this, kind of as you mentioned, is that really that lack of frontage next to that common drive for things like trash bins, et cetera. It's having been near some of these, lived near some of these, I've seen ones that are fine, seem to be great, and some that are crammed and packed, and there's not really any area for a car, maybe two, to park along kind of the adjacent areas because of that kind of cramped frontage area. So my question is comment and some question of just the consideration of repositioning those one or both of those common lots. And I know you probably don't have, maybe if you do have people who are willing to comment, but just I'd love some clarification around how committed the position those common lots are, and whether there's willingness to alter the order of where those common lots are relative to the common drive to increase that frontage.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Smith, so are we talking about these common lots?
Yes. So specifically talking about those common lots, and mostly probably common lot 5 is what I would imagine, which is right below the pathway, and kind of the ordering relative to say lot 7 and 8. Going from that common drive into the cul-de-sac. There seems to be some frontage to the right, or some ability for people to access. For example, in garbage cans is a perfect example, and that's top of mind right now. There's some space to the right, but I worry about congestion of, especially on a recycling week. Garbage cans. You have 4 to 5 houses potentially using garbage cans, recycling cans, all in that area. With kind of minimal area to disperse. And so I'm just curious about the common lot, theoretically, if you were to flip common lot 5's position with lot 7 and making adjustments for square footage, et cetera, and other code requirements, what that might look like, and if that's a consideration, or if you guys are married to the use of those common lots in those specific areas.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Smith, I could take a moment and visit with my client, but are you talking about switching a residential lot in relation to one of those common lots?
Theoretically, as an option, I'm really just I guess I'm trying to drill down on potential solutions to that common drive issue that we're talking about here, and that's one of them that's just coming to mind of. Say switching lots, making lot 7 a common lot and lot 5 is, a residential lot. And that's, I'm not a planner, so that's very spitball version of that, but yes.
I could visit with my clients, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Smith. I guess the way I look at it, if we're talking about putting more residential lots around the cul-de-sac, it seems like it would drive the garbage can issue to be more of a concern compared to having a common lot on that cul-de-sac.
I'm specifically referencing the common lot would still be within the cul-de-sac. It would just be within the cul-de-sac adjacent to the common drive rather than adjacent to the pathway specifically.
So you're talking about putting the common lot over here next to the common drive?
Yeah, say for example, you were to swap lot 7 and common lot 5, and to increase the street space available for residents of that common drive.
I'm not sure exactly how that, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Smith, exactly how that lines up with the adjacent open space that we're trying to, I guess, maximize. But if you don't mind, I could ask my client that if you'd like.
Yeah, it's not, make or break. It's just, it's something that Commissioner Lorcher is correct that I've seen it done well and I've seen it done not so well. Of sometimes these common drives, especially in cul-de-sacs or along curved driveways. There's one near my house where I think it's not too great, where there's, especially when it's icy, and there seems to be serious risk of things are backed up in that corner, and there's a lot of garbage bins, and because of that, parking is offset, and it just becomes this really tight area, and there's not a lot of space to maneuver. That's really the concern here, and again, not make or break, but I think I wonder if there's opportunity to improve that. Is all. So I don't need you to consult, but if that's something you wanted to.
If you don't mind, I'll jump in here a little bit. Usually I'm the person that's coming after you for common drives. So there's a couple things in play for me here with this particular application. So one, you have the existing lot that's there that opens up a lot of space to put anything in there. Two, there's already been a recommendation to reduce the lots by 1 on there. More than likely, one of the lots that would be reduced is going to be along that common drive. There's also something that's becoming more prevalent in the neighborhoods, and that is that they can actually pick up your garbage in a common lot. So they will make it to where, and with an agreement, and that was something that I was going to bring up, is that basically there should be an agreement with the trash collection company to pick those up in the common drive instead of having them out in the cul-de-sac. So I think there's a lot of different ways to solve the potential issues within this application right here. So generally speaking, if there's 5 common drives in one application, I'm vocal about it. But where there's one here and they've already been asked to reduce the lot, that's going to accommodate some of it. And then again, I think if that is an issue within the subdivision itself, they can't ask for common drive pickup. So essentially, they put their trash cans out on the far side of the common drive, and the trash truck backs in. It costs a little bit extra, but they can accommodate it. So,
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Want to kind of follow up?
Sure.
So the spirit of that question, I'm trying to reduce some of these issues without potentially maybe preserving the amount of lots was the thought, but that if reducing the number of lots by 1 is kind of the way that the winds are blowing, that's totally fine as well. I think there's just a little too much pressure in that corner, but that information about the common lot pickup is also very informative and helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, if I might, my light came on just as Commissioner's light up here.
Okay.
As Commissioner Smith was finishing, and as you were commenting, one of the benefits of having this large lot here, the driveway access is up here at the top. So this is essentially a functional equivalent of like a common lot with all of this open space. We're not going to have additional access there from other lots. So there is, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, quite a bit of room there that's not going to be used as it would for a typical residential lot in the cul-de-sac. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is there a question for you?
Yeah,
I just wanted to.
Oops, sorry.
Sorry.
Mr. Rivera, go ahead.
Sorry. I just wanted to clarify that easement is between lot 2 and the existing lot, correct? I mean, lot 3, that the entry is going to be over there, so it's going to be pretty much fenced all along that cul-de-sac on the lot 3, correct?
I believe, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rivera, I believe that's correct.
Mr. Grace?
Is the applicant being required to put those common lots in that spot so that it can back up against future common lots? You,
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Grace, my clients indicate that that's not the case. We're not being required to put them there.
okay. So you're sort of doing it out of the good graces to, yeah. And they could put houses there. Okay, thank you.
Anything further, Commissioners? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate it. And with that, I will take a motion to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0089 Millwood subdivision.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0089. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, conversation.
I'll start.
Go right ahead.
I actually like this one for once tonight, with one exception. And because we're not the deciding factor on annexation or zoning and preliminary plat, so that'll be something you'll have to take up with City Council, is in my, I'm starting my third year of experience here on the commission, common driveways are a problem. A problem for your residents, a problem for selling your product, a problem for utilities, a problem for garbage collection. Even if you have them all up on the side of the road, if I was in Lot 4 at the end of that common driveway, and once or twice a week, garbage or whomever else is coming down and beeping back and forth, or if Republic or Hardin forces you to put all the cans up in front, then you've got 10 possible cans all sitting at the entrance, and you may have to, swerve around just to get to your property because the arms of those garbage trucks are going to leave them wherever they're going to leave them. So it doesn't make very good neighbors. I've lived on a cul-de-sac in Parkside Creek, and our driveways were all big enough to be able to accommodate cans in front of our own driveways. But on a common lot, they're either stacked up against that wall like you suggested, where the garbage cans have to come back in and out, or they're possibly going to butt up against the farms, partial of the cul-de-sac, and then you're going to have cans all over the place. So I'm not sure if it's a safety issue. It's maybe more of an aesthetic. But in our experience here at the commission, we have found that common driveways are problematic, especially when you have two lots, and I understand it abuts possible common lots in another subdivision, when you have an ample portion of your cul-de-sac that you could have individual driveways not marrying up to that common driveway, eliminating that, especially if you were to eliminate one parcel. So all I'm suggesting is before you go to City Council, you may want to consider how those common lots fit compared to the driveways on the common driveway. It's not enough for me to deny it. I guess whoever buys parcel 4 needs to know what they're getting into when they purchase that home on that common driveway. But overall, I like the design. And as long as all the code enforcements are met, I feel for you with the farm. I have one of those as well. And I'm very familiar with Officer Haran and worked with him in the past. And just be a good developer to a neighbor who's been there for a long time.
Commissioner Grace?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm in favor of approval of this. I actually feel like we're requiring several expensive modifications. Well, I mean, I didn't hear for safety reasons or zoning reasons, or I thought I heard more of aesthetic or maybe just desirable type things. So it sounds like the bridge may be resolvable, so that's good to know. But it is kind of a little bit of a weird shaped property. There's not a lot of homes here, relatively speaking, to other things we've reviewed. I think that existing home does make it difficult. It takes up a lot of the property, and it's awkwardly shaped. Applicants added common space where it wasn't required, and the density is already on the lower end. So I'm in favor of it.
Commissioner Smith, go ahead.
Mr. Chair. I agree. I think in a perfect world, if you could make that larger lot on the south side and you have more cul-de-sac space, everything's perfect. But not here to make the perfect the enemy of the good, and I think this is still a good application. So with that being said,
Well, if you don't mind, there's a few things that I want to make sure that we remember.
yes.
The applicant did ask to condition that the south property, that there are no two-story homes. We want to include the additional staff comments, or sorry, we want to include the additional staff recommendations. And if you would like to, I think that usually we reference verbiage that's like something like work with staff on bridge dimensions and requirements, just to kind of keep it open, and that doesn't put any requirements on it other than they work with staff in order to make sure that everybody's in agreement on what the bridge should be, or can be, and will be in the future.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner, the last item was if this body doesn't support staff's recommendation for losing lots, then that would be condition 2A to strike.
Okay.
Okay. So I believe I have everything, and I am happy to amend if I miss something. So I move that we, after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to the City Council, file number H 2022-0089, as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of February 16th, 2023, with the following modifications. I would like to approve with the conditions in the staff report, including the 2 additional staff recommendations, striking the recommendation for losing lots, adding a further condition of no two-story homes on the southern face, or the southern lots in the development, and then lastly, a request to work with staff on dimensions and requirements of the bridge. I believe that's all.
I have a second.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to recommend approval of file number H 2022-0089 Millwood subdivision with their aforementioned modifications. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay?
I'll say aye.
Okay. Motion passes. All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go right ahead.
I motion we adjourn.
Have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.